The medical station on Kepler 44, to be never slept. Commander Zarath moved through the halls like a blue shadow, her azure skin reflecting the harsh white lights. 3 years had passed since she last smiled. 3 years since the Devourers had taken everything from her. The ritual scars on her arms told the story of her loss. Each thin line represented a day of mourning for Kethra, her bondmate who died defending a human colony. The humans had built their settlements too close to Devourer space. They had drawn the monsters to their sector, and now everyone was paying the price. "Commander, we have incoming wounded," called Nurse Veltar from the communications panel. The young Altarian's voice carried the exhaustion they all felt. 3 transport ships, heavy casualties. Zarath nodded and walked to the main medical bay. The large room was already prepared with 20 beds, each equipped with life support systems for different species. She had learned to work with beings from across the galaxy. Humans, Altarians, Catharians, all fighting the same enemy. The first transport ship docked with a metallic clang. Zarath watched through the window as medical teams rushed to unload the wounded. Most were conscious, walking with help from their comrades. These would be the easy cases. The second ship brought more serious injuries. Zarath moved quickly between patients, her trained hands working to stabilize wounds and administer treatments. A Cathari soldier had lost his primary breathing organ. A Zephyrian pilot suffered from severe burns across her wing membranes. Each patient received the same professional care, regardless of species. But it was the third ship that brought the case that would change everything. "Commander, we need you here now," shouted Dr. Moran, the station's chief surgeon. His forearms moved frantically over a patient on the central bed. Human soldier, massive trauma to the left side. "I've never seen injuries like this." Zarath approached the bed and felt her breath catch. The human male was barely conscious, his left arm completely severed at the shoulder. His uniform was torn and bloody, but his dark eyes remained alert. Most beings would have passed out from blood loss and pain, but this human was trying to sit up. "Patient's name is Sergeant Marcus Chen," reported the medic who had brought him. Found him holding off a devourer, attack squad by himself, saved an entire refugee convoy. Zarath studied the human's face. He was young, maybe 30 years by human standards. His black hair was matted with sweat and blood, but his jaw was set with determination. Even in his condition, he was fighting to stay awake. "Sergeant Chen, I am Commander Zarath," she said, placing her hand on his forehead to check his temperature. "You are safe now. We will take care of you." Chen's eyes focused on her with surprising clarity. "Commander, I need to tell you something important. The Devourers, they're not attacking randomly. There's a pattern." "Save your strength," Zarath said firmly, preparing the surgical instruments. "We need to operate immediately." "No, you don't understand," Chen insisted, trying to grab her wrist with his remaining hand. "I've been tracking their movements for weeks. They're targeting specific locations. Medical stations, supply depots, communication hubs. They're trying to break our support network." Zarath paused. Most patients in Chen's condition would be delirious from pain and blood loss.
Out.
The recent attacks had seemed random, but perhaps there was a plan behind them. "Dr. Moran, prepare the operating room," she ordered. "Sergeant Chen, I will listen to what you have to say, but first, we must save your life."
Ah!
Chen nodded weakly. "I need to stay awake during the surgery. No pain medication." "That is not possible," Zarath replied. "The pain would be too much for any being to handle." "I've handled worse," Chen said, his voice growing stronger despite his injuries. "I need to draw you a map of the Devourer positions. If I'm right, this station could be their next target." Zarath stared at him. In all her years of medicine, she had never had a patient refuse pain relief. It went against every instinct she had as a healer, but something in Chen's eyes told her he was serious. "You will not survive the surgery without pain medication," she warned. "I will survive," Chen replied. "Humans are tougher than you think." Against her better judgment, Zarath agreed to the human's request. As they moved him to the operating room, she found herself curious about this strange soldier. She had treated many humans before, but none had impressed her. They seemed weak compared to other species, lacking the natural armor of the Cathari or the enhanced senses of the Zephyrians. The surgery began at 0800 hours. Zerath worked carefully to seal the damaged blood vessels and remove the shattered bone fragments. Chen remained conscious throughout, his face pale but determined. Between procedures, he used his good hand to sketch diagrams on a tablet. The Devourers hit the mining station on Proximo 7 3 days ago, he explained, his voice tight with pain, and the communication relay on Vega 12. Yesterday they destroyed the supply depot on Tau Ceti 4. Look at the pattern. Zeroth glanced at his drawings while suturing a major artery. The locations formed a rough circle around their current position. If Chen was right, their medical station sat in the center of a closing trap. How do you know this? She asked, genuinely curious. I was part of the evacuation team for each location, Chen replied. I saw the attack patterns firsthand. Oh. Devourers aren't just hungry monsters. They're strategic. They're cutting off our ability to reinforce and resupply our front lines. As Zarath worked, she found herself impressed by the humans' endurance. Any other species would have passed out from the pain, but Chen continued drawing tactical maps and explaining his theories. His dedication reminded her of Kethra, who had also put duty before personal safety. The surgery took 4 hours. When it was finished, Chen's vital signs were stable, though weak. Zeroth had done everything possible to save his life, but she knew the recovery would be long and difficult. Your drawings are complete? She asked, reviewing the tactical information. He had provided, yes, Chen replied, exhaustion finally showing in his voice. If I'm right, the Devourers will attack this station within the next 24 hours. You need to prepare defenses and evacuate the critical patients. Zerath studied the maps more carefully. The pattern was clear once she knew what to look for. The Devourers were indeed targeting the Alliance's support infrastructure, trying to cripple their ability to maintain the war effort. Why should I trust the analysis of one human soldier? She asked, though part of her already believed him. Chen managed a weak smile. Because in 6 hours, their scout ships will appear on your sensors, approaching from the asteroid field on. Bearing 127 Mark IV. If I'm wrong, you can ignore everything I've told you. Zarath felt a chill run down her spine. The human spoke with absolute certainty, as if he had seen the future itself. She had spent 3 years blaming humanity for the war, but perhaps she had been wrong. Perhaps they were more than the reckless species she had imagined. As Chen finally allowed himself to rest, Zerath made her decision. She would alert the station's defense commander about the possible attack. If the human was right, his information could save hundreds of lives. 6 hours later, the long-range sensors detected 3 Devourer scout ships approaching from exactly the direction Chen had predicted. The broken healer realized that perhaps she had been wrong about humans, and perhaps she had been wrong about many things. The alarm sirens wailed through the medical station as the first energy blasts hit the outer shields. Zarath ran through the corridors, her medical kit bouncing against her hip. The Devourer attack had begun exactly as Sergeant Chen had predicted. All medical personnel to emergency stations, announced Commander Vex over the intercom. Prepare for possible evacuation. Zerath burst into the recovery ward where Chen was supposed to be resting. His bed was empty. She found him 3 rooms down, helping Dr. Moran move critical patients to the station's protected core. Sergeant Chen, you should be in bed, she said firmly. Your surgery was only hours ago. Chen looked up from the patient he was helping to transfer. Despite his missing arm, he was managing to assist with the evacuation. Commander, with respect, I can't lie in bed while this station is under attack. We'll reopen your wound, Zerath argued. You need rest to heal. I need help, Chen replied stubbornly. I know how these attacks work. I've seen them. Before, another blast shook the station. The lights flickered and several patients cried out in fear. Zarath watched as Chen immediately moved to comfort a young Altarian child who had been injured in a previous attack. It's okay, he told the child in broken Altarian. The grown-ups will keep you safe. The child stopped crying and looked. At Chen with wide eyes. Despite his injuries and exhaustion, the human soldier had a calming presence. Zarath found herself surprised by his gentleness. Commander Zarath, to the bridge, came Nex's voice over the intercom. "We need you here now," Zarath hesitated. She didn't want to leave Chen alone, but duty called. "Stay with the patients." She ordered, "Do not try to do anything dangerous." Chen nodded, but she could see in his eyes that he had no intention of remaining inactive. On the bridge, Commander Thex pointed to the tactical display. "The Devourers have sent 12 attack ships. Our shields are holding, but they're targeting the power generators." "How long can we hold?" Zarath asked. "Maybe 6 hours," replied Lieutenant Cass, the station's tactical officer. "But if they breach the shields, we'll have to evacuate." Zert studied the display. The Devourer ships were moving in a pattern she had seen in Chen's drawings. They were systematically weakening the station's defenses before moving in for the final strike. "I need to speak with Sergeant Chen," she said. "The human soldier?" Thex asked. "Why?" He predicted this attack. He might know their next move. When Zarath returned to the medical bay, she found Chen at a computer terminal, his good hand flying over the controls. He had pulled up the station's defensive systems and was studying the power grid. "What are you doing?" she demanded, analyzing. "Their attack pattern," Chen replied without looking up. "They're not trying to destroy the station quickly. They're trying to force us to evacuate so they can capture our medical supplies and equipment." "How do you know this?" Chen turned to face her. "Because I've seen this exact same attack pattern. 3 times before, the Devourers learned from each victory. They're getting smarter." Another blast hit the station, stronger this time. The lights went out for several seconds before the emergency power kicked in. "The main shield generator is failing," Chen said, checking the readings. "They'll focus all their fire on it now. Then we evacuate," Zarath said. Firmly, "If we evacuate, they win. They get the medical supplies, and dozens of other stations become vulnerable. What do you suggest?" Chen pulled up a schematic of the station's exterior. "Someone needs to go outside and manually reset the shield generator. It's located on the outer hull, Section 7. That's suicide," Zarath said. "The Devourers will target anyone who goes outside. Not if they can't see them," Chen replied. "The generator is located in a maintenance shaft. It's too small for most species to access, but a human could fit through it." Zarath stared at him. "You want to go out there? With one arm? Under enemy fire? I'm the only one who can fit through that shaft," Chen said calmly. "Hey, and I know the Devourer. Firing patterns. I can time the repair between their attack runs." "This is insane," Zarath protested. "You're still recovering from major surgery." "Commander, look at me," Chen said, his voice gentle but firm. I'm not going to die today. I have too much to live for now." Something in his tone made Zarath pause. She looked into his dark eyes and saw not recklessness, but careful calculation. This human had survived dozens of battles by thinking clearly under pressure. "Explain your plan," she said reluctantly. Chen turned back to the computer. The Devourers attack in waves of 3 ships. Each wave lasts exactly 90 seconds, followed by a 60-second pause while they recharge their weapons. During that pause, I can move through the maintenance shaft to the generator. What if you get stuck? Then you'll have to evacuate, Chen said simply. But if I succeed, the shields will hold long enough for reinforcements to arrive. Zarath felt torn between her duty as a doctor and her responsibility to the station. Everything in her medical training said to keep Chen in bed. But everything in her military experience said his plan might work. "I'll go with you," she decided. "No," Chen said immediately. "You're needed here. If something happens to me, you need to be ready to evacuate the patients. I won't let you go alone." Chen smiled, and for the first time since she'd met him, Zarath saw warmth in his expression. "I appreciate that, Commander.
What?
But this is what humans do. We take calculated risks to protect others." Before Zarath could argue further, Chen was already moving toward the equipment lockers. Despite his missing arm, he efficiently gathered the tools he would need for the repair. "Chen, wait!" she called after him. He turned back to her. "Why are you doing this? Why risk your life for people you barely know?" Chen was quiet for a moment, then said, "Because someone has to. And because I've learned that sometimes the right thing to do is also the hardest thing to do." As he headed for the airlock, Zareth found herself watching him with new eyes. This human was nothing like what she had expected. He wasn't reckless or stupid. He was brave in a way that few beings could understand. The station shook again as the Devourers continued their assault. On the tactical display, she could see the shield strength dropping steadily. In minutes, they would fail completely. A voice came over the intercom from the airlock. "Beginning even now. Wish me luck, Commander." Zareth pressed her hand against the communication panel. "Be careful, Sergeant. That's an order." She heard him chuckle. "Yes, ma'am. See you in a few minutes." As she watched him disappear into the maintenance shaft on the external cameras, Zareth realized something had changed. For the first time in 3 years, she was worried about someone other than herself. The human soldier had somehow managed to break through the walls she had built around her heart, but she pushed those thoughts aside. Right now, all that mattered was that Chen succeed in his mission. The lives of everyone on the station depended on it. The tactical display showed the next wave of Devourer ships approaching. Chen had exactly 60 seconds to reach the generator and complete the repair. Zareth H. held her breath and waited. The medical station's shields flickered back to life just as the Devourer attack ships began their final assault. Chen's repair mission had worked, but the victory was short-lived. Commander Thex's voice crackled over the intercom with grim news. "All personnel, prepare for immediate evacuation. Long-range sensors show a Devourer fleet approaching. We have 2 hours before they arrive." Zareth watched through the observation window as Chen made his way back through the maintenance shaft. His movements were slower now, exhaustion finally catching up with him. When he reached the airlock, she was waiting for him. "The repair worked," she said, helping him remove his EVA suit. "But we have to leave." Chen nodded, breathing heavily. "How many critical patients do we have?" 18 who cannot be moved safely," Zareth replied, "including the Altarian child you helped." "Earlier then? We don't leave them behind," Chen said firmly. "The evacuation ships only have room for 12 patients," Zareth explained. "We'll have to make difficult choices." Chen was quiet for a moment, then said, "What if we don't use the evacuation ships? What if we take the patients through the Evolta?" "Asteroid field? That's impossible. The asteroids are too dangerous for large ships." "Not for large ships," Chen agreed. "But what about small ones? Medical shuttles could navigate between the asteroids. Devourers would never follow us through there." Zareth considered his suggestion. It was risky, but it might be their only chance to save everyone. The journey would take 3 days. Some of the patients might not survive. "They definitely won't survive if we leave them here," Chen pointed out. 2 hours later, Zareth found herself piloting a medical shuttle through the treacherous asteroid field. Chen sat beside her, his remaining arm working the navigation controls. Behind them, 18 critical patients lay in medical pods, their life support systems powered by the shuttle's backup generators. "Asteroid coming up on the left," Chen warned. "Just course by 2 degrees. Made the correction smoothly. Despite his injuries, Chen had proven to be an excellent navigator. His human reflexes and spatial awareness made him perfect for the dangerous journey. "How did you learn to navigate asteroid fields?" she asked. "Growing up on Luna," Chen replied. "My father was a mining engineer. He taught me to read space like other people read books." They flew in comfortable silence for a while, the shuttle weaving between massive rocks that could crush them in an instant. Zareth found herself relaxing despite the danger. There was something calming about Chen's presence. "Warning signal from Pod 7, Chen announced, checking the patient monitors. "The Cathari soldier is showing signs of distress." The Cathari warrior, a veteran named Rix, was suffering from organ failure. His species required a specific type of medical gas that was running low. "We don't have enough of his breathing mixture to last 3 days, she told Chen. "What about substitutes? None that won't cause permanent damage." Chen studied the medical readouts. "What if we put him in temporary stasis? Reduce his metabolic rate until we reach safety." "Cathari don't respond well to stasis," Zareth said. "The process could kill him." But without it, he'll definitely die. Zerat H nodded reluctantly. Yes. Then we try stasis, Chen decided. Sometimes the only choice is between a small chance and no chance. As Zareth prepared the stasis procedure, she noticed Chen talking quietly to the other conscious patients. He was explaining the situation honestly, asking for their understanding. Most military commanders would have simply given orders, but Chen treated everyone as equals. You're good with them, she observed. They're scared, Chen replied. Fear is easier to handle when you know what's happening. The stasis procedure was successful, and Hrix's condition stabilized. But as they continued through the asteroid field, new problems arose. A family of refugees they had picked up during the evacuation included 3 children who had developed a fever. It's not responding to standard treatments, Zareth said after examining the children. I've never seen symptoms like this. Chen looked at the test results. The fever pattern is unusual. It rises and falls in regular cycles, like it's following some kind of biological clock. You think it's artificial? Maybe the Devourers have been experimenting with biological weapons? What if this isn't a natural disease? Zarath felt a chill run down her spine. If Chen was right, the children might be carrying a Devourer bioweapon. But they were just innocent refugees caught in the middle of a war they didn't understand. We need to isolate them, she said. No, Chen said firmly. We need to cure them. Chen, if this is a weapon, it could spread to the other patients. Then we make sure it doesn't, Chen replied. But we don't abandon children because we're afraid. For the next 6 hours, they worked together to understand the mysterious illness. Chen's tactical mind proved surprisingly useful in medical research. He approached the problem like a puzzle, looking for patterns and connections that Zareth might have missed. Look at this, he said, pointing to a genetic analysis. The disease targets specific cellular structures, but it leaves others completely. Alone, it's very selective, Zarath agreed. Almost like it was designed to cause maximum suffering without killing the host. Psychological warfare, Chen said grimly. The Devourers want us to be afraid of our own people. As they worked, Zareth found herself impressed by Chen's dedication. Despite his own injuries and exhaustion, he refused to rest while the children were sick. He reminded her of the healers in her own culture, who believed that saving one life was worth any personal sacrifice. Why do you care so much about these children? She asked. They're not even your species. Chen was quiet for a moment, then said, My sister died when I was 12. She was about the same age as the youngest girl. I couldn't save her, but maybe I can save them. Zarath felt something stir in her chest. It was a feeling she hadn't experienced in 3 years. Compassion. Not for a patient, but for the person beside her. I'm sorry about your sister, she said softly. She would have liked you, Chen replied. She always said the best doctors were the ones who cared more about their patients than themselves. Working together, they finally identified the bioweapon and developed a treatment. The children's fevers broke just as they reached the outer edge of the asteroid field. A rescue! The ship was waiting for them, sent by the Alliance fleet. As they transferred the patients to the larger ship, Zareth watched Chen saying goodbye to each one. The Altarian child hugged him with her small arms, and even the stoic Cathari warrior nodded respectfully. You did good work, Sergeant Zareth, said as they prepared to board the rescue ship. We did good work, Chen corrected. I couldn't have done it without you. For the first time in 3 years, Zarath smiled. It was a small smile, barely visible, but it was real. The human soldier had somehow managed to remind her why she had become a doctor in the first place. As they settled into quarters on the rescue ship, Zareth found herself looking forward to whatever mission they would face next. Chen had proven to be more than just a skilled soldier. He was a good man, and perhaps, in time, he might become something more. The thought scared her, but it also gave her hope. Maybe it was time to stop running from the possibility of caring about someone again. The hidden Alliance base looked like a small moon from the outside, but inside it was a maze of tunnels and chambers carved into solid rock. Zarath and Chen had been there for 2 weeks, working with the medical research team to understand the Devourer bioweapon they had encountered. The test results are troubling, Dr. Kane announced to the assembled officers. The elderly human scientist displayed holographic images of the virus structure. This weapon is designed to target all known Alliance species. All except one. Zareth H. felt her stomach drop. She knew what was coming next. Humans appear to be completely immune, Dr. Kane continued. Their cellular structure is resistant to the virus in ways we don't understand. Admiral Nexus, a stern Zephyrian, with battle-scarred wings, leaned forward. Hey! Are you saying that humans created this weapon? No, Admiral, Dr. Kane replied quickly. The technology is definitely Devour in origin. But somehow, human biology is naturally protected against it. Zareth glanced at Chen, who sat quietly beside her. His face showed no emotion, but she could sense his tension. Around the room, other officers were looking at the human soldiers with suspicion. This presents us with an opportunity, General Thok said. The massive Cathari warrior's voice echoed through the chamber. We could use humans as advanced forces, extend them into contaminated areas where other species cannot go. You're talking about using them as expendable troops, Zareth said, standing up. That's not an opportunity. That's a war crime. Commander Zareth, Admiral Nexus said coldly, you will speak only when asked. No, let her speak, Chen said, his voice calm but firm. She's right. Using any species as expendable troops is wrong. The room fell silent. It was unusual for a sergeant to speak directly to an admiral, but Chen seemed unafraid. Sergeant Chen, Admiral Nexus said, your species has a unique advantage in this war. Are you not willing to use it? I'm willing to serve, Chen replied, but I won't be part of a plan that treats soldiers like disposable tools.
Hit it!
Meeting Zareth found Chen in the base's small garden area. He was sitting alone, staring at the artificial stars projected on the ceiling. He stood up to the Admiral, she said, sitting beside him. Someone had to, Chen replied. The moment we start treating people as expendable, we become no better than the Devourers. But you will volunteer for dangerous missions, Zareth observed. I've seen you do it. Chen nodded. There's a difference between volunteering and being forced. When I choose to take a risk, it's because I believe it's the right thing to do. When someone else decides my life is worth less than theirs, that's different. Zareth studied his profile in the artificial starlight. You're not afraid of dying, are you? I'm terrified of dying, Chen said with a slight smile, but I'm more afraid of living without honor. Over the following days, Chen continued to volunteer for reconnaissance missions and to devour a controlled space. His immunity to the bioweapon made him the perfect scout, and his tactical knowledge made him invaluable. But Zareth noticed that each mission changed him slightly. You're carrying guilt, she told him one evening, as she treated a minor injury he had sustained during his latest mission. What do you mean, survivor's guilt? You feel bad about being immune when others? Aunt Chen was quiet for a long moment. My entire unit died protecting that medical station where we met. 23 good soldiers, all dead because they were exposed to the bioweapon. That's not your fault, isn't it? If I had been there, if I had realized what was happening sooner, maybe I could have saved them. Zareth finished bandaging his arm and sat back. You know what I think? I think you're afraid to be happy because you feel guilty about surviving. Maybe, Chen admitted. But that guilt keeps me focused. It reminds me why I fight, and what happens when the war is over. Will you still carry that guilt? Chen looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. I don't know. I've never thought about life after the war. Maybe you should start, Zareth said softly. The next morning brought urgent news. Chen's latest reconnaissance mission had revealed the location of the primary Devourer bioweapon facility. It was a massive complex on the planet Hadrian 5, protected by energy shields and automated defense systems. The facility is producing thousands of virus containers every day, Chen reported to the command staff. If we don't stop it soon, they'll have enough bioweapons to contaminate every Alliance world. Admiral Nexus studied the tactical data. How do we approach it? The defenses are too strong for a conventional assault. Could use a small team. Chen suggested. Humans could get inside the facility and plant explosives. That's suicide, General Thok objected. Even if humans are immune to the virus, the facility has other defenses. Not if we go in with the right plan, Chen replied. I've studied the facility's layout. There are weaknesses we can exploit. Zareth felt a chill. She knew what Chen was thinking. He was planning to volunteer for another dangerous mission, one that would likely be his last. What kind of plan? She asked. Chen pulled up a holographic display of the facility. The bioweapon production centers are deep underground, but they're connected to the surface by ventilation shafts. A small team could enter through the shafts and plant explosives at key points. The shafts are too small for soldiers in armor, Admiral Nexus pointed out, but not too small for humans without armor, Chen said. We could use modified medical equipment to create portable life support systems. Zareth H. realized where this was heading. You're talking about medical personnel going with you. I'm talking about you going with me, Chen said, looking directly at her. You understand the bioweapon better than anyone? You would know exactly where to place the explosives. For maximum effect, that's impossible, Admiral Nexus said. We can't risk our chief medical officer on such a mission. With respect, Admiral Chen replied, Commander Zareth H. is the only person who can ensure the mission succeeds. Without her knowledge, we're just guessing. The debate continued for hours, but in the end, the decision was made. The mission was too important to fail, and Chun's plan was their best chance of success. That night, Zareth found Chun in the armory, preparing equipment for the mission. He was working with his usual efficiency, despite having only one arm. Are you afraid? She asked. Yes, he said simply, but not of dying. I'm afraid of failing. If this mission doesn't work, billions of people will die, and if it does work, Chen paused in his work. Then maybe we'll both live to see what peace looks like. Is that something you want? To see peace? More than anything, Chen said, his voice soft, especially if I can see it with you. Zareth felt her heart skip. In all their time together, Chen had never spoken so directly about his feelings. She realized that she felt the same way, but the thought scared her. Chen, I know, he said gently.
Ow.
You lost someone you cared about. You're afraid to care again. Sometimes the best way to honor the dead is to choose to live. As they prepared for what might be their final mission together, Zareth found herself hoping that Chen was right. Maybe it was time to stop being afraid of the future and start believing in the possibility of tomorrow. The bioweapon facility on Hadrian 5 looked like a metal mountain rising from the planet's surface. Zersh and Chen approached it in a small stealth shuttle, flying low to avoid the automated defense systems. The plan was simple, but dangerous. Enter through the ventilation shafts, plant explosives at the production centers, and escape before the facility self-destructed. Life support systems are green, Zareth reported, checking her modified medical equipment. The portable breathing apparatus felt strange compared to standard military gear, but it was their only option for fitting through the narrow shafts. Defense grid shows a gap in Sector 7, Chen said, piloting the shuttle between scanning beams. We have a 3-minute window to reach the entry point. They landed on the facility's roof, just as the defense sensors cycled to the next sector. Moving quickly despite his missing arm, Chen led Zareth to the ventilation shaft they had identified in the reconnaissance data. Remember, we stay together, he said, attaching a safety line between them. If we get separated in there, wait. For me, what if something happens to you? Zareth asked. Then you complete the mission alone, Chen replied. Many lives depend on this to worry about just 2 people. The ventilation shaft was even smaller than the images had suggested. They crawled through the metal tunnel for what felt like hours, following Chen's mental map of the facility's layout. The air was thick with chemical fumes, and Zareth was grateful for her breathing apparatus. First target ahead, Chen whispered, pointing to a junction where the shaft opened into a larger chamber. Below them, massive machines hummed as they produced containers of the deadly virus. Zareth studied the production line through the shaft grating. The central processing unit is there, she said, pointing to a large cylindrical tank. If we place the explosive there, it will create a chain reaction. Chen carefully removed the grating and lowered himself into the chamber. Zareth followed, her heart racing as they moved between the machines. The place felt evil, like a factory for death itself. Explosive planted, Chen reported through their comm system. Moving to target 2. They continued through the facility, placing charges. At 3 more production centers, everything was going according to plan until they reached the final target. As they approached the last chamber, alarms began blaring throughout the complex. "They've detected us," Chen said, checking his scanner. "Security forces are converging on our position." "How long until they reach us?" Zareth asked. 5 minutes, maybe less." They dropped into the final chamber and ran toward the central control system. This was the brain of the entire operation, the computer that coordinated all bioweapon production. Destroying it would cripple the Devourer's ability to create more viruses. There, Zareth pointed to a massive server bank. "That's the primary control node." Chen attached the final explosive, but as he programmed the timer, a section of the ceiling collapsed. Debris crashed down between them, separating Zareth from the exit shaft. "Zareth," Chen called from the other side of the rubble. "Are you hurt?" "I'm okay," she replied, though her left leg was pinned under a fallen beam, "but I can't move." Chen appeared at the top of the debris pile, his face grim. "I'm coming to get you," Zareth said firmly. "The explosives are set. You need to get out of here. I'm not leaving you behind." "Chen, listen to me. If you stay, we both die, and the mission fails. If you go, at least the facility gets destroyed." Chen stared at her for a long moment, then began climbing down the debris pile. "I told you we stay together. I meant it." Despite her protests, Chen worked frantically to free her trapped leg. Using pieces of fallen machinery as levers, he managed to lift the beam enough for her to pull free. But the effort reopened his surgical wounds, and blood began seeping through his shirt. "You're bleeding," Zareth said, examining his injuries. "I'll live," Chen replied, helping her to her feet. "Can you walk?" "Yes, but Chen, your arm? ... Later," he said, pulling her toward a different exit route. "We need to find another way out." The facility's layout had changed with the collapse, blocking their original escape route. Chen led them through maintenance corridors, using his tactical knowledge to avoid the security patrols. But with each passing minute, their situation grew more desperate. "Timer shows 2 minutes until detonation," Chen reported. They reached what looked like an exit, but it was sealed by an electronic lock. Chen began working on the controls with his good hand, while Zareth watched for guards. "Patrol coming this way," she warned. "Almost got it," Chen muttered, sweat beading on his forehead. The lock clicked open just as Devourer soldiers rounded the corner. Chen grabbed Zaretha's hand and pulled her through the doorway, sealing it behind them just as energy blasts hit the other side. They found themselves in a loading bay with several small transport pods. Chen quickly activated one of them, and they climbed inside as explosions began echoing through the facility. 30 seconds, Chen said, firing up the pod's engines. The pod shot out of the facility just as the first explosive detonated. Behind them, the massive complex began collapsing in on itself, destroyed by the chain reaction Zareth had planned. The bioweapon threat was ended, but their pod was caught in the shockwave. "Hold on!" Chen shouted, fighting to control their spinning craft. They crashed in a forest several kilometers from the facility, the pod's emergency systems deploying, just in time to save their lives. When Zarath regained consciousness, she found Chen unconscious beside her, his breathing shallow but steady. She spent the next hour treating his wounds with supplies from the pod's medical kit. When he finally opened his eyes, she was sitting beside him, holding his hand. "Did we make it?" he asked weakly. "The facility is gone," she confirmed. "Mission was successful." Chen smiled. "Good. That's good." "Chen, why did you come back for me?" "You could have escaped. Because some things are more important than missions," he replied. 3 years ago, your bondmate made a choice to save human lives. Today, I made a choice to save yours." Zareth felt tears forming in her eyes. "Kethra would have liked you." "I hope so," Chen said softly, "because I'm hoping you might learn to care about me the way you cared about him." Zarath looked down at their joined hands. For 3 years she had been afraid to feel anything for anyone. But Chen had shown her that love wasn't about avoiding loss. It was about choosing connection despite the risk. "I already do care about you," she admitted. "That's what scares me." And maybe we can be scared together, Chen suggested. A rescue ship found them 6 hours later. As they were lifted away from the planet, Zareth made a decision. When they returned to the base, she would remove her mourning scars in the traditional ceremony. But this time, she would ask Chen to help her create new ones. Scars of hope. Instead of loss, the war was far from over, but they had struck a crucial blow against the Devourer bioweapon program. More importantly, they had found something worth fighting for beyond duty and revenge. What happens now? Chen asked, as they watched the stars through the rescue ship's window. Now we heal, Zareth replied. And then we find the next mission. Together. Together, she confirmed, squeezing his hand. For the first time in years, Zareth was looking forward to the future. The human soldier had taught her that sometimes the greatest courage wasn't in facing death, but in choosing to live and love again. And perhaps that was the most human thing of all.